Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here, got another Master Duel video for you. So today's video is going to be a little bit more on the fun side. Even though we're still playing with meta archetypes like Spright and Adamancipator, we're going to be doing a little bit of cooking today and combining these two archetypes. So Spright Adamancipator, it's a list you may or may not have seen around. It's been gaining a little bit of traction lately. Noticed that some other content creators have been making videos about this deck. I've been noticing it here and there on Ladder. It's something I saw talked about like kind of briefly when Sprites came out and everyone was like, you know, looking for archetypes that had a lot of like level 2s in them. And of course we have the Adamancipators. They have Seeker and Researcher each being level 2. The problem, of course, with trying to make this archetype work with Sprites is that Spright Starter and Gigantic Spright are going to lock us into level ranking League 2s, whereas Adamancipator wants to go like a whole swath of different, synchro monsters and league climbing. So how do these archetypes end up coinciding? A little bit better than I thought, actually. One of the main things that I've noticed with this deck is that you can do some Adamancipator plays, right? Where you can start off with like maybe a Researcher plus like either a Seeker or an Analyzer, or maybe even a Koa'ki or a Guardian, and you can use the Excavates to try to hit either a Guardian or a Supplier to go into Gallant Granite and then find Block Dragon. That's of course what pretty much every Adamancipator deck wants to do. However, you know, the deck can often fall flat when it can't find Block Dragon. The idea here though is that at the very least, if we can't find Block Dragon, then we just pivot into Spright plays, because it's not hard to have one of these like random level 2 rock monsters out on the field, and then do our Adamancipator combos. They get disrupted, or Excavates don't hit, or we can't fight Block Dragon for whatever reason. Then we can just take this like extra Spright Blue that's in our hand and just go like, alright, special Spright Blue, add Jet, add Starter, go for Gigantic, go for Elf, and then end on like more of a Spright end board, as opposed to more of an Adamancipator end board. You can see the extra deck does support all the stuff for a Spright end board. We've got one of each Gigantic and Elf. Elf we already played in Adamancipator anyway, so really it wasn't too much of a stretch to just fit the Gigantic into the extra deck. And then we still have, of course, IP, and then all these other different stuff that we can go into with IP, like Knightmare Unicorn, Maxx, Appaloosa, Accesscode, and Underworld Goddess. I've actually kind of been thinking of dropping Underworld Goddess for a second Spright Elf, because there's definitely been moments where I could see needing to. Another thing about this deck, or another engine rather, that you can put into this deck relatively easily is the Prank Kids engine. Of course, Prank Kids already slot very nicely in with Adamancipators in the form of Roxy's being able to be excavated, but Roxy's can not only get excavated and then go into Meow Meow Moo, which is not in the extra deck, of course, because we're not playing it, but it's over here, and then get out of Dropsies, and guess what level Dropsies is? Yep, that's right, 2. So that's potentially another way that you can pivot into Spright plays with this deck. I initially built this without Prank Kids because I wanted to keep it at 40 cards, but this is obviously a deck that you could pretty easily go to 45 or even 50 and still be totally fine and fairly consistent there. Also got to give a huge shout out to one of my patrons, David, who during our coaching session, I'd seen this deck around before, but this was one of the decks that we really explored during that coaching session, and that actually got me pretty inspired to try the deck out for myself as well. So I wanted to thank David for, again, just like turning my attention to a pretty cool deck. Now, as far as where I think it is in the meta, I do think this is probably like just a rogue deck. I mean, I say just a rogue deck, but of course rogue decks are still hitting, like, you know, more than capable of hitting Diamond or Diamond 1 or Duelist Cup max level with a dedicated pilot. As far as whether or not this is a meme or a dream, I do think it is more on the meme side, but it's not a bad deck by any means. It's definitely more than playable. This is like, I don't know, this is kind of one of those, like I talked about this a little bit at the start of the video here, but sometimes I like to cook with meta archetypes, but in a way where, like, you know, you're not just playing the meta deck. Not that you all obviously know by this point I don't have an issue playing the top meta decks, but I like to cook as well, and I think this was a very fun little cooking session, a little bit of culinary art here. I was putting together this Spright Adamancipator list. It's neat. Another cool thing that we have as far as synergy between the Adamancipators and Sprites go doesn't just lie in the fact that Seeker and Researcher are level 2, but also 2 of the best cards you could hit off of them, Doki Doki and Cartorhyn, the hidden gem of the Seafront, are also both level 2. So sometimes what I'll even do, and you'll see this a couple of times in the games coming up, is like, you know, I'll get stopped in my Adamancipator plays, so I pivot into a Spright play, and then we'll use Gigantic Spright to not even grab Red or Carrot, but just like grab a Seeker or a Researcher and just see if we hit Doki Doki or Cartorhyn. It's, you know, we have 6 hits in a 40 card deck. That's not like impossible odds by any means, especially once you've thinned your deck out by searching out a bunch of your Spright cards, your non-hits. Then from there, you have more materials to go into a whole bunch of different stuff. As well as just have like a bunch of random level 2s at the end of your board to use as materials with IP, to send off with Spright Smashers, so on and so forth. So yeah, this deck was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun throwing it together and trying it out myself. Again, as far as whether it's a meme or a dream, I do think it's a little bit more on the meme side, but just because a deck is a meme doesn't mean it's like bad by any means. I think this deck is definitely one of the better memes that I've seen cobbled together. Or that I was gonna say that I've cobbled together, but I'm not gonna pretend to like think that I invented this deck at all. So, as I mentioned, I've got the inspiration to finally put it together from David on Patreon over there, but had seen it around before as well. Alright, so I think that is going to do it for the list here. Let's go ahead and break it down card by... Oh! Master Duel Central was the channel that played it. I was trying to remember in my head. I felt so bad that I couldn't. It was Master Duel Central was the channel that I saw featured when I was talking about content creators. I wanted to be specific. I just couldn't remember who it was off the top of my head, but I'm glad I remembered that so I could give them credit. And in fact, if I haven't done this already, feel free to yell at me about this, and I'll go ahead and link their deck profile in the description as well, so you can, if you're really interested in this deck, you can get some like multiple points of view on it as well. But in any case, yeah, let's go ahead and break the list down card by card, and then we'll look at some gameplay. So we're playing 3 Maxx, 3 Doki Doki, 3 Adamancipator Seeker, 3 Adamancipator Researcher, 3 Spright Blue, 1 Spright Jet, 1 Spright Red, 1 Spright Carrot, 3 Cartorhyn, the hidden gem of the Seafront, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 1 Gigantes, 3 Koa'ki Mirror Guardian, 2 Adamancipator Analizer, 3 Koa'ki Mirror Supplier, 1 Block Dragon, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 2 Call by the Grave, 2 Spright Starter, and then 1 Spright Smasher. And that's it, we're only playing 40 cards. It's gonna round only playing 40 cards because I've been playing so many 60 card piles lately. But that's gonna do it for our main deck. For the extra deck, we're on 1 Herald of the Arc Light, 1 Adamancipator Risen Raptite, 1 Borreload Savage Dragon, 1 Adamancipator Risen Dragite, 1 Baronne de Fleur, 1 Gigantic Spright, 1 Gallant Granite, 1 IP Masquerena, 1 Asa the Earth Charmer Immovable, 1 Spright Elf, 1 Knightmare Unicorn, 1 Mekk-Knight Crusadia Avermax, 1 Appaloosa Bow of the Goddess, 1 Accesscode Talker, and then finally 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. It's going to round out the list there. Now let's take a look at some gameplay. For our first duel, we're going to be up against Adamancipator. Not another Spright Adamancipator, no. This is going to be 60 card Shizu Adamancipator that we are up against. We do get to take the first turn though, so that's definitely going to be very nice. And looking at our opening hand, as you can see, we're going to be pretty much relegated to mostly Spright plays here. Going to start off with the red. Of course, want to get that online first for the monster protection before we special summon the Spright Blue. I could have also, and probably should have also specialed Carrot as well, but I also did note that my opponent was on a 60 card deck, so that makes it much less likely that they have Imperm, not just due to the fact that they're on 60 cards, but also because the 60 card decks really are not playing infinite permanents. That's one of the main reasons I didn't feel the need to throw out the Spright Carrot right away here. One thing that you definitely need to be doing in this meta is always checking how many cards are in your opponent's deck before you start making your plays. That's honestly something that you really should be doing like, even before this meta, but especially now where these 60 card mill piles are like everywhere, knowing that your opponent is on a 60 card pile is huge information to have right off the bat in a duel, because you already know, like, you know not to expect certain styles of play. Like, it's very, very unlikely that they'll just go like set 4 back row pass or like set 5 pass. You know to expect, as I mentioned, a certain tech, like, or what to expect they not have, like infinite permanence. And from there, there's also just like the general knowledge that they're going to be more graveyard based. So, yeah, just having that knowledge is super handy. It'll definitely dictate how you make your turn 1 plays a lot of the time. I'm going to get Spright Smashers here because we already have Red and Carrot, so Starter really does not do anything at all here. And yeah, you'll notice that I actually went straight for the Adamancipator Seeker with a Gigantic Spright. As I just mentioned, we already have both Red and Carrot, so there's no need to grab either of those. We already used Jet as well. Having Blue doesn't really do anything here, so at this point, there's kind of no reason not to just grab Seeker and then see what we can excavate here. Looking at our top 5, we do find ourselves hitting a Cartorhyn, the Hidden Gem of the Seafront. Now, of course, even though we hit a Koa'ki Guardian as well, due to the fact that we've used Gigantic Spright's effect, we can only special summon level, rank, and link 2. Like I said, that is going to be the big conflict between these two archetypes, and mostly of what keeps this deck more on the meme side than the dream side. But as you can see here, we're still able to use Adamancipator Seeker as a pretty solid extender in this case. And from here on, we're just going to link those two away for the Spright Elf. Now we use that to bring back just another level 2 monster, the blue in this case. Link that away along with the Gigantic Spright in order to go into our IP Masquerena. And then we can throw down Spright Carrot and Smashers. And yeah, I mean, in this regard, this is the type of end board we always want to see in pure Spright as well. So you could argue that well, yeah, you just did a more inconsistent path to get there. And it's yeah, it was less consistent, but at least it was fun too. I don't know, again, this is like I said, this is a lot more of a fun kind of a brew that still has a competitive focus, which is the kind of deck that I like to cook up. It's my favorite kind of deck to play, really, is against something that's is it optimal? Not necessarily, but is it cool? Is it neat? Yeah. Can we do it? Yeah. Well, then why shouldn't we try? So, just kind of my thought process there. Anyway, opponent's going to normal summon Doki Doki at the start of their turn. That's going to, of course, indicate they are on Adamancipator as well. I'm going to bring back the Jet in response to search up the starter here. You'll notice I didn't bring back Spright Blue. That's because I really don't have, I don't really have any more sprites to search, but even if I was playing pure Spright and I had another Jet or Red to get, I would still want to get the Jet off of the Elf and not the Blue. I see a lot of people special summon Spright Blue off of Elf and search up a Jet. I like searching Jet and getting a starter more because it's a one-card play and doesn't require me to have another level 2 monster. So I'll let the Doki Doki activate its effect before negating and destroying it with Red, sacking off the Spright Elf. But it's going to try to follow up with the Gigantes into a Adamancipator Researcher. I'm going to chain the Maxx, and my opponent's just going to concede at that point, which, I mean, this is always the drawback to trying to play in Diamond 1. I think a lot of people concede too early in Diamond 1, and you might think, well, you fired off Maxx, they were always going to special summon a lot, but at the same time, as I've proven multiple times on the channel, Adamancipator and other Shizu piles can absolutely deck someone out who's played Maxx and has a significant portion of their deck gone, like I did here. I just wish my opponent would have tried. It's kind of my overall wish for Diamond 1 in general. I get that the point is that, they can't de-rank, so of course there's no need to try, but it's come on. It's even the point of playing if you're just going to fold right away. But anyway, there's that duel. Let's go take a look at the next one here. Alright, we're up against another 60-card Shizu pile. This time we're up against a Fluffle-based pile, which have actually done pretty decently well in the MCS as well. Actually, I don't know if the Fluffle deck that topped was 60-card Shizu or not, but anyway, here we have actually another pretty Spright-centric hand, I should say. As we're going to start with the Spright Starter into Spright Blue. I promise the next game, there is one game coming up where we do actually some Adamancipator plays as well, but here at the very least we get to use the Doki Doki as just a level 2 monster to go for the Gigantic Spright. It's definitely a shame that we opened both Starter and Smasher, because that means that Jet's not really going to do a whole lot for us here, so I'm not going to really bother searching it. I'm just going to use Gigantic Spright to grab us a Seeker. Seeker is going to whiff on its Excavate. Remember, even though we did hit the Koa'ki Guardian, because it's not level, rank, or league 2, we can't special summon it because we use both Starter and Gigantic Spright's effects. So here, I actually debated for a moment if I wanted to go into IP Masquerena with these two, but ultimately decided not to, and just ended up passing back to my opponent. The main motivation for this was because I really wanted to make sure I had an extra material on board to use with my Spright Smashers here. We're going to use Spright Starter at the beginning of our opponent's turn to grab the Carrot. If we had if we'd gone for IP using these two, we'd have Spright Elf IP ending our turn. At the start of the opponent's turn, we starter for Carrot, and then we would need to use Elf effect to bring back Red. That doesn't leave us with a great card to get rid of with Spright Smashers, unfortunately. So I ultimately decided that I valued the Spright Smashers as removal a little bit higher than I valued IEP Masquerena as removal. One of the main reasons that was the case was because this card that's left in my hand is Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, and I want to use this. I don't want to discard it for Knightmare Unicorn. So that's what primarily motivated me to not go into IP here. I was going to start by summoning the Springin's Kid. I should have Spright Starter during their draw phase. There's literally no reason for me not to do it then, but I'll just go ahead and do it now. That's fine. Oh, and you know what? I think I actually misclicked here. I did, yeah. I mixed up the order I wanted to do things here. This was a misplay on my part. For some reason, I thought I was adding off of Blue and not summoning off of Starter, so I picked Jet when I meant to summon Carrot. And then, of course, now I have to use Blue to add Carrot, so it's a little rough. I mean, I'm missing out on a Spell Trap Negate. Opponent's got a Branded Fusion. I'm going to throw out the Ash Blossom here. In this case, you know, where I don't have Carrot in play, I absolutely would have much rather had the IP Masquerena, but we'll just have to live with our misplay. It would be nice to use the Spright Carrot against Polymerization here. I would definitely be doing that if I had the Carrot on board. But I don't, so my opponent's just going to go ahead and fuse. But fortunately for me, they actually go for the Guardian Chimera. It looks like it's the only option they really have at this point. And then, of course, as soon as they activate that effect, I'm just going to go ahead and chain Spright Red to negate and destroy the Guardian Chimera. This does not target, so it will not be protected by having Polymerization in the graveyard. And then at that point, my opponent's left without resources, and I still have a whole bunch of monsters on the field to not only make Spright plays with, but here it would have been very easy to start just synchroing and going for a big Adamancipator end board. So there is that duel. Let's go and take a look at this next one here. Surprise, surprise, we're playing against yet another 60-card Ishizu pile. This one's definitely... This person was cooking as well. It's a lot of going second stuff, but they let me go first. Oh, well, yeah, going second. Never mind. But yeah, no. It's a lot of going second stuff, like a ton of kaijus. And also there's a DPE and Adventure Engine as well. No artifact size shenanigans going on, though. So it's like DPE, Adventure, Kaiju, Ishizu pile. Which is an interesting combination, like I said. But in any case, we're going to go first here. And this time I will start with some Adamancipator plays here. You'll start by normal summoning the Seeker and seeing what we can excavate. We did hit a Doki Doki, that's pretty good. Gonna use that to discard the Koa'ki Guardian and grab ourselves an Adamancipator Analizer to keep these excavates going. Gonna activate the Analizer here, and it looks like we're gonna end up whiffing. No, actually we grabbed a Koa'ki Guardian at the last minute there. Pretty good for us, so now we get to go into our Adamancipator Resident Raptite for yet another excavate. Would be nice to hit a level 4 rock monster here to go into the Block Dragon. We do actually manage to hit the Supplier. Oh, but I didn't summon it. I grabbed Cartorhyn instead. Huh, that's interesting. Wow. I don't really know why I did it that way. That was definitely a minor misplay on my part. I mean, I say minor because we're still going to end on a really solid turn 1 inboard, but no, you know what it was? It's the thing with Koa'ki Guardian is I actually like having it up, and sometimes in certain situations I'll actually value it a little more highly than certain other plays. And here I did think about potentially summoning the Supplier and using it and Guardian to go into Gallant Granite. The problem with that is if my opponent has been holding an Ash Blossom, which is very possible that they were, a lot of people will do that. They'll hold the Ash Blossom against the Excavates and wait for either the Gallant Granite to search for Block Dragon or the Block Dragon search itself. Usually the Gallant Granite search for Block Dragon, but I thought to myself, you know, if they have Ash Blossom, I'm kind of screwed here. But if I keep the Koa'ki Guardian on the field, I can have protection up and then still pivot into Spright plays, was my reasoning for making that decision here. So, well, but then I linked away the Koa'ki Guardian. Oh, but then we can just bring back the Spright Elf, or bring back the Doki Doki with the Spright Elf here. That'll let us get the Cartorhyn, and this will allow us to have the Gigantic Spright, which is still vulnerable to the Ash, to be fair. But at the very least, we end up with a Spright Elf and an Adamancipator Resident Dragite on the end board instead of, if we had gone for Gallant Granite and that had gotten ashed, we would have ended on just Gallant Granite plus Dragite and nothing else. So I felt like having Spright Elf plus Dragite was just a little better of an end board than Gallant Granite plus Dragite. honestly, most of the time when it comes to risk versus reward, I will tend to take the less risk-averse play and play it a little more safely, especially in situations like this. Alright, so now we're going to link these two off for our IP Masquerena. Setting, or no, not setting, activating the starter, because we haven't done that yet. Setting up a Spright Red, and then setting the Smashers, and then passing back to our opponents. So, even though we didn't go for the Block Dragon line and more Adamancipator type plays, we did still end up with a very solid end board here of the Spright Elf, which can bring back the Jet to potentially search from their starter. We have an IP Masquerena as an interrupt. We have the Spright Red as an interrupt. We have the Dragite as an interrupt, and the Smashers. And then, of course, we still have Maxx and Ash Blossom in our hands. So, I think this was also another motivation for me to not want to pivot into Block Dragon plays here, is because, you know, even if we ended up not doing Block Dragon stuff, we can still end up with a very solid end board. That, to me, is a lot of the appeal of Spright Adamancipator as a deck, is, again, that if you don't want to make the Adamancipator plays, you can still just very easily end on a Spright board. So it's going to start before the main phase by negating the Spright Red with a Sky Striker Widow Anchor. It's a very interesting, like I said, very interesting deck my opponent's playing. They do have a small Sky Striker package, as well as their other Going Second and Adventure and DPE stuff. Like I said, I'm going to use Elf to bring back Jet, that way I can get the Spright Starter. But it's going to summon a Kaiju to my board, getting rid of the Dragite. I'm going to fire off a Maxx in case they have another Kaiju, which it turns out they do. They have the Lightning Strike Kaiju. Looks like they're linking that in Mudora into Asa, the Earth Charmer. Now here, I definitely did not want them to get back my Koa'ki Mirror Guardian, so I'm going to flip up Spright Smashers in response to the summon before my opponent has a chance to activate the effect. We can then banish it off the field that way. Here my opponent's got a Mudora. They can put back the Cartorhyn, which will turn off my Dragite spell Trap Negate, which could potentially be a problem, although they are still under Maxx, and we do still have an Ash Blossom in this hand as well. From here, it looks like they are pivoting indeed into their Sky Striker engine a bit, giving me some draws in the meantime. And then getting back a Widow Anchor, but they don't have enough spells to negate and steal here, which is nice. Yeah, they end up summoning Hayate. I'm guessing to put a third spell in the graveyard to then negate and steal with Widow Anchor. I don't think I could have Ash Blossomed that, because I'm pretty sure that's like a during damage calc or after damage calc kind of a thing. Although maybe I could and I'm wrong about that. But either way, I mean, it's fine. Like, if they negate and steal one thing, we obviously have more than enough cards in our hand to come back. Opponent probably realized that. That's why they ended up scooping there. So that is actually a game where we end up not going the Block Dragon route, but we still could have at multiple points. And it's really, you know, it's arguable and debatable whether or not the Spright end board or the Adamancipator end board was safer or better to go for. But either way, we end up getting that W. We do still have one more game to take a look at. Let's go straight into it. And for our final duel, we're going to be up against Galaxy-Photon, which is obviously more of a fun deck. But we will still definitely be showing this one, because this was a decent back and forth. Went first once again here. I'm going to start by normal summoning the Koa'ki Mirror Guardian and then activating the Cartorhyn. That will allow me to get another normal summon for the Seeker. And then I can special Spright Blue. So here I can get a little bit of Spright plays in before I just hard start excavating off of the Adamancipators. And we're only doing a little bit of Spright plays before we hard commit to being locked into level rank in Lake 2 with the Gigantic Spright or the Spright Starter. So here the opponent's got a Jewel Unlock. I'm definitely going to use my Koa'ki Mirror Guardian against that. And when I go to excavate, they have the Imperm, but of course I still have the Spright Jet in my hand, which I can then use to get starter. And then we'll just pivot into Spright plays. It's honestly, I think, kind of the coolest part about this deck is that the Adamancipator stuff, as you can see, more often than not, it's been more just like negate bait or just like the precursor to our plays. And then if it doesn't pan out, which to be fair, it is less likely to because we're playing the Spright stuff as well and making the Adamancipator side less consistent. But if that doesn't work out, we still always have the Spright plays to fall back on as well. Get to bring back a Cartorhyn from a grave because we excavated one off the deck, so I'm just going to use both my Cartorhyns to go into Spright Elf. Can bring back a random level 2 monster that'll let me go into IP. Then I can also use Spright Starter to go into red, while still keeping the Researcher and the Gigantic Spright around as well. to not only be used as material with the IP Masquerena, but also if they survive through my opponent's turn, then great, I have a lot more materials just start going off on their turn. As you can see, our opponent's going to start off with a Lava Golem, tributing the IP Masquerena and the Spright Elf, so definitely not what we like to see, but we still at the very least have not only our Spright Red negate up, and also by leaving Researcher and Gigantic Spright up here, we have the option to negate with Red if we just need to do that, or we can negate and destroy if we want to do that with Gigantic Spright as well. We also still have the Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, so given how few cards our opponent's on, after all their Disruption, and the Lava Golem, that's also being Disruption, I'm not really too worried. We still have enough responses to counter them here, so activating Galaxy Soldier's effect, I'm going to activate the Spright Red to tribute and negate it. Their last card is their last Imperm, or their second Imperm rather. So that's going to negate the Spright Red. The Galaxy Soldier will successfully resolve. And I don't doubt my opponent could have had plays here if this effect had gotten to activate. But like I said, we have the Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. So I'm going to go ahead and put a stop to that. Now my opponent's got nothing left in hand, field, or grave that's relevant. And they have to pass it back to me. Top decking the Spright Starter is pretty nice, but might have even been unnecessary here, because we still have the Gigantic Spright effect. I'm just going to use that to grab a Seeker and just see what I excavate. That is going to 2-lock us, to be fair, but I'm hoping we can still have enough, if not damage on board, to outright end the duel this turn, just enough board presence to make sure our opponent can't come back. And they just decided to concede right there. Maybe they didn't realize I was 2-locked and might have actually had a bit of a time finding lethal, but I mean, if that's what they assume, then that's fine. They just end up giving us the win anyway. So those are our games here with this deck. Like I said, it was a very fun deck to mess around with. I don't know if it's what I'm going to use seriously, competitively, but at the very least, you know, not every single deck, even if it uses try-hard archetypes like Spright and Adamancipator, necessarily has to be a try-hard deck itself. But that's going to do it for this one. Let's go and move on to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack. You'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation. You do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot, as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is XLex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.